Hello everybody, my name is Michael, and in today's video what we're going to be doing is this right here. So if that looks exciting to you guys, please carry on and watch the video. Oh, and just one more thing before we go. Please consider like, commenting, and subscribing if you enjoyed the video. But now with all that out of the way, let's carry on with the video. So the good thing about these Wizkids miniatures is they're already pre-primed, but I have just added a little bit of a base to the miniatures you can see here, which is just a few stones from my driveway, and I've just primed them up. But once we've done that, and it's all completely dry, we're going to, of course, be starting off with our skin tone here, and using tan flesh to do this, because I want to go with a nice wood elf style half elf that's got wood elf genes in its blood. So I think the tan flesh is going to help that out by being that more naturalistic, darker skin tone. And we, of course, want to be applying it everywhere we can see the skin on this model. Then once we have that skin tone down, what we're doing now is coming in with some burnt umber. And for the burnt umber, what we're going to be doing is we're going to be using it for his pants / boots area. So it's all like this one big, nice long boot that pretty much goes all the way up to the side of his thigh there, so it's very hard to see the difference in the sculpture. So we want to make sure that by painting it all the one color, it's going to all fit in naturally and look like one big long boot, like how it's sculpted in. And then once we've done those boots, what we're going to be doing now is coming in with some khaki, and we're going to be using the khaki color to be painting up these nice long sleeves that this half-elf archer has on him here, with some chains wrapped around it, so it's pretty cool design for a miniature. And khaki color is just going to help do this. We want a nice sort of leatherish looking color for completing this part of the miniature. Then once we have those sleeves / armbands done, we're going to come in now with some angel green, and we're going to be using this for the main bit of clothing for the miniature, sort of his skirt he has on here. And you can see I have thinned down the paints like I told you, but I've thinned down the paint just a little bit too much, and it's running all over the place. So you don't want to take my advice. You don't want to water it down this much so it's running everywhere and starts pooling. You want to add a little bit less water so it's not running all over the place. But nevertheless, we want to go over it in a couple of coats. It's going to take me a couple extra coats since I've thinned my paint down just a little too much. And then once we have that skirt all painted up, I'm going to come in now with some mahogany brown. And for the mahogany brown, what we're going to be doing is we're going to be placing it just along the quiver along his back here, just on this one area, making sure we get a good coverage on there and just avoiding anywhere that we've got in the paint before, since it's pressing hard, really hard up against that skin and that dress we've just painted up before too. So now we have that base color of the quiver down. We're going to come in now with some cavalry brown mixed together with a little bit of vampire red. Now, it's a little bit more cavalry brown than vampire red. It's sort of 2 drops cavalry brown to 1 drop vampire red to give off the reddish brownish hair color that I want for our half elf here, who is half elf with the wood elf lineage. And I'm going with the darker skin and the nice red hair for this. So this mixture is what I'm after here, so don't be afraid if you want to mix some paints together to get this as well. Okay, so now what we're going to be doing is we're going to come in now with some charred brown. We're going to be using this in a couple of places on the miniature here. We just want to be placing it, as you can see, on the wooden part of the bow that we can see, so we're avoiding the skull and that little bit of metal banding, which I'm going to be making metal banding. You don't have to here, you can paint the whole thing wood if you want to, but I want to save it there for a little bit of metal banding. As well as that, I also want to be doing just this little part here of the dagger that he's got sheathed in his side as well. Then once we have those parts picked out, we're going to come in now with some royal purple. And for the royal purple, it's just only in one small little spot, as I'm going to be placing it just in front here. As you can see where that skirt's wrapped around, but I wanted to add in another color here, add in a bit more visual interest. So in this one little spot here, the sort of loincloth area, we're going in with that royal purple and painting that up. And then once we've completed that, what we're going to be doing now is coming in with some Necromancer Cloak. And I'm just going to be using Necromancer Cloak to be just painting up the headband around his head of the miniature. And the Necromancer Cloak is going to help give some contrast to the very light colors we have there with his hair color and his skin color as well. Okay, then once we have that headband painted up, what we're going to be doing now is coming in with some skeleton bone. And of course, we want to be using this on some skulls. So we've got some nice animal skulls, I'm guessing, on this bow, which is a really awesome idea for a bow, I think. So we want to be making sure we get that everywhere over the parts of the skulls we need to. And it may take a couple of coats, especially since I've gotten a little bit of that very dark charred brown on there. So be careful when doing that you don't get too much of the darker colours everywhere. But nevertheless, we still want to be giving it 2 coats anyway. Then once we have those skulls painted in, we're going to come in now with some leather brown. And for the leather brown, all we're going to be doing is we're going to be just painting up this little pouch you can see on his side here, where he's carrying all sorts of little things while he's rangering around doing his ranger thing. Also too, we want to be just getting alongside the shaft of the arrow as well there with the exact same color. So what we want to be doing now is we're just going to come in now with some ivory, and all I'm going to be doing is I'm just going to be painting the ends of the arrows, those nice bits of feathers that we have on there. We want to be painting them up with the ivory. And of course, don't forget to do the one that he's got in his hand ready to fire. Then once we have that complete, we're going to come in now with some rough iron, which is a very dark metallic color. And I'm going to be using this along his middle piece. He has sort of like that middle armor piece along his chest there. So I'm going to be coming in with that nice dark iron color to help really give a lot of contrast to these colors here and help tie the whole thing together. So again, being very, very careful to avoid anywhere we don't want this metallic to be, especially since it is a metallic and it's going to be a little bit harder to clean up. So being very concentrated and focused where we want this. And also, while we have the rough iron, I'm also going to be painting up these chains that he has wrapped around his arms as well. You may want to make them just a different style of rope, but they're carved into the miniature to look like they're being chains, so that's what I'm going to paint them up as nice rough iron chains. Okay, so now what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to come in now with some dirt spatter, and I'm going to water it down a little bit more than I usually would, because I want it to get into all those little gaps and nooks and crannies into the areas where I've gotten the stones glued on there and all primed up. So it's going to be a lot of deep recesses and stuff in there. So getting that in there, you want to make sure you thin your paints down quite a lot. So don't be afraid to thin them down a little bit more than usual to paint up the base there. Okay, now we have that nice ground stuff painted up. We're going to come in now with some brassy brass. And all we're going to be doing is we're going to be painting up some sort of trim style areas on the miniature. So along these caps on the quiver, which is going to give it a nice bit of color and contrast here. So I've gone with brassy brass rather than an ordinary steel metallic color, as I wanted them to have a little bit of flash and give them that more elf style look. And they use a lot more colored metal, I feel, than just straight silver. So brassy brass is going to help highlight this, and it's going to fit with his ranger theme as well. And then once we've done that, we're going to come in now with some actual ordinary metal, so using gun metal to do this, of course. And all I'm going to be doing is using just a couple of small parts. There's some nice little rivets along his bit of metallic armor he's actually wearing. So I want to dot those in with just a little bit of that gunmetal. And while picking out those details, you also want to make sure you get that arrowhead as well, which of course we want to be a nice steel arrowhead so it can strike true. But while we're also doing that too, we just want to be painting up the handle of his dagger he also has at his side. So don't forget about that too. Then once we have that complete, we've got our base coating steps done. So time to come in with some Seraphim Sepia. And for the Seraphim Sepia, what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be placing it over top of the bone areas where we have on the bone. And we also want to be placing it just on the parts of the arrow where we've got all those nice feathers at the end of the arrow tips as well. So don't forget to place some of the Seraphim Sepia wash on there as well. Then once that wash is completely dry, we're going to come in now with another wash, and we're going to use some AGRAX EARTHSHADE. Now, AGRAX EARTHSHADE we're going to be using a lot over this miniature. Pretty much now what we're going to be doing is we're going to be placing the AGRAX EARTHSHADE everywhere that isn't metallic. So everywhere that isn't metallic, we're also too going to be avoiding those sleeves that he has on his arms. We're not going to be painting that in with the AGRAX Earthshade either. We're just going to be leaving those alone, as well as the metallic areas. Otherwise, we want to give everything a nice overall wash with our AGRAX Earthshade. And of course, don't forget to do the ground underneath his boots and his cape. So don't be afraid to get this everywhere. That it's going to be a lot of the miniature itself. And then once that's completely dry, what we're going to be doing is coming in with some flesh wash, and I'm just going to be placing this over his hair. Because flesh wash has a bit of a reddish tint to it, I'm going to help accent that redness out with the flesh wash on his hair as well. And then once that's completely dry, what we're going to do now is coming in with some nuln oil. And for the nuln oil, we're going to be placing it over the metallic areas. So we want to make sure we get it across that nice bit of metallic arm he has along his chest. As well as that, we're also going to be doing the whole lot of the sleeves in the nuln oil wash. This is why I said we wanted to avoid it before. Just to separate it out as a different style from all the brown wash we'll place everywhere else. It's just going to help add in a little bit more visual interest. But don't be afraid to get it over all these areas, and just be careful to avoid it pooling, since there is a lot of little small nooks and crannies in these areas too. And then once we have all that dry, it's time to move on to some highlighting. So starting off with some skeleton bone here. And all we're going to be doing is running the edge of our brush just along the top of the skulls here on the side of the bow. So being careful, I'm carefully picking out the eye as well, because that's going to be a nice point to focus on, as well as just the little ridges along the edges of the miniature. And you can see I'm just skimming it along with the side of my brush. Okay, so now we're going to come back with some tanned flesh, and we want to be picking out the highlights of the skin. So for this, I've got a nice fine tip brush again, and I'm hitting areas like the tip of the nose, the tip of the chin, anywhere where we're going to have a bit of stand out to the sun, so it's going to be reflecting off, so we want those points just a little bit higher. See the side of the pec of his muscle there, and just very carefully going in and making sure that we're not painting over the whole thing, we're just trying to hit those high points. And then once we've completed that, we're going to come back in with some khaki now, and we're just going to be, of course, hitting the high points of the arm braces slash bands slash sleeves. I'm not quite sure exactly what to call them, but we just want to be getting those gaps in between the areas where that have that nice iron chain wrapped around. So being very careful here, just getting the very tip of my brush into those bits of detailed areas where the sun would naturally be hitting. Now we have those sleeves highlighted. What we're going to be doing now is coming back in with some brassy brass, and just again hitting those high points and those rough little edges. So you can see here I'm just going for the front of the bow here and a little streaking motion, so there's a little bit of line work to the thing, as well as on the quiver here. You can see I'm just brushing it in short small lines, so it's got a rough uneven pattern in the highlight. And then once we've done that, it's time to come back in with some angel green, and we want to be hitting at the highlight points of his skirt. So it's totally up to you how you're gonna go about this, but you can see there is some nice sculpted in points of the highlights where those nice folds are happening. So be very aware that you want to make sure you want to get the top of those, and then just as you can see, adding in a little bit more onto those flatter areas as well, just so we've got a little variation in the miniature. And then once you do that, all you got to do is base the miniature up. But as you can see, we've already painted up a base, but I'm going to be making it on a snowy base, so he's firing in the snow at some elk or something in the distance. And with all that completed, we have finally finished painting up our half-elf ranger from the Pathfinder Battles Wizkids range. And you can see that we've really helped emphasize that awesome sculpt it has. We're looking down its bow, ready to fire at you, with all these different unique colors and bits of contrasting elements to the miniature. So I hope this has been helpful for you guys, whether you want to follow along or you just enjoy me painting up some cool miniatures. But with all that out of the way, I'd like to thank you all for watching, and I can't wait to see you guys in the next video.